Condemned. One way or another, the characters have been branded as criminals and sent to languish forever beneath the earth in a vast underground cavern complex. Terrifying, blind monstrosities stalk these lightless reaches, and the remnants of ancient evil fester in the dark. The characters must find their courage, conserve their light, and quieten their footsteps should they ever hope to escape the land of the blind. Welcome, everybody. This is the little introduction to our upcoming 5e adventure releasing in March 2023. And we are Mammoth Factory. Here is I'm Dav. That's Daniel. That some direction. Our head writer, and Lucas, head playtester, community manager, operations, that lot of stuff. So just to explain a little bit about our process, most of the time, me and Daniel co-write the adventure together. We come up with bullet points. Then Daniel fleshes out the text, then I edit it, and we kind of do back and forth. And we also then, after that, send it to Lucas, and he does a bunch of other playtesting. We also do the playtesting in team. Sometimes Daniel is the DM, sometimes I'm the DM. So it's very hands-on, and we probably spend way too much time on it. Also, we have, with every adventure, we have VTT tokens, paper miniatures, and battle maps. I'm probably forgetting something. Foundry conversions that are also coming. So that's with every adventure. What we're going to do today is we're going to go over Land of the Blind, and with our very pretty DM shortcut, which is basically something we're very proud of, which is kind of an overview of the whole adventure. It tells you how much game time each section takes, the different chapters, more or less what happens, what monsters for each encounter. There's page direct, like clickable links, and just a general kind of like for the DM. These are 4 or 5 sessions each adventure, and we have also here the overview map, which has also a bunch of information. For example, what goes to where, roughly speaking, and what is an abstract travel, right? That requires survival, and what is direct route and secret passages and the names and all of that stuff. Without further ado, we're going to just go over this adventure in a way that you can understand as a DM how to run it. Roughly, of course, you'll need to read the whole thing, but we're just going to go section by section and help you understand what this Land of the Blind adventure is. Oh, importantly, this is chapter 1 of our third book, which is also going to be our third Kickstarter later. And this is part of a setting called. Do we reveal the setting name?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's
Yeah?
it's in Deephold, right?
Deephold.
Which is part of a larger world, but we're in Deephold for now.
Yes. So Deephold is kind of. So I'm just going to ask questions, and Daniel will be answering them, as he was the main writer on this one. So where is this adventure taking place, and what is the tone of this adventure?
This adventure takes place in Australia. But seriously, it takes place in Deephold, which is our equivalent of the Underdark, right? It is a sprawling underground cavern complex full of ancient ruins and monstrous creatures and weird stuff, right? And the tone? This one is very much a survival horror kind of one, sort of. Definitely very much focused on survival. It harkens back a bit to kind of conserve your torches, keep your supplies at hand sort of gameplay that you might have found in some older editions of D&D.
So the opening really kind of covers a little bit more of that. It's also an opening for the campaign. So if you want, if you're playing this as a one shot, you can also just skip and go directly into. You were traveling somewhere in the Underdark, somewhere going into some caves and you got locked in.
Yeah,
There are many ways
or like,
we have different examples.
Yeah, or villagers asked you to find their missing townsfolk, and you tracked them to a cave, and then it caved in. Now you're stuck.
Exactly. Exactly. So we give a few of these examples also in the adventure. So basically, there's an explanation of the collapse and how you got stuck underground with, and you don't know where you are. And the what Daniel means by Australia in this case is it's basically where this setting sends its criminals. So you get branded with like what was your crime, and it has a bunch of cool kind of aesthetic to it and a feel if you're playing the campaign.
It's also just down under, right?
It's that exactly. So going into part 2, which is after the expose, how does this work? Like this awakening. Well, what happens? What happens there?
Right, yeah. So awakening is really where the kind of survival and navigation part of this whole thing kicks off, right? At this point, you have been stranded underground, and you just awaken, kind of chained up, right, in this kind of in this cart. And the first challenge is, well, one, you've got no light, right? And then two, you're sort of chained together, and you've got to figure out how to get out of that with no light and search the area around you for anything you can use to get your bearings. And this is where really the survival mechanics of this whole thing sort of kick off.
So what are some of the challenges that this kind of tone of the adventure kind of bring when it comes to scavenging and surviving and light and all that stuff?
Yeah, so basically the base adventure assumes you have no real equipment at the start and you have to like forage for it. But in general, right, so first there's no light, right? You have to conserve your torches. The setting sort of assumes less dark vision, but of course people will have dark vision, right? There'll always be 3 or 4 people, maybe more, right? But if you don't, then torches become a big deal. Figuring out how to find food in the Underdark is a big deal as well, right? It's not like there really is much growing down here. It's rocks and stone, right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole survival table about that stuff, and there's a whole kind of navigation table about like finding your way in the caves. And so if we look at the map for a second, the navigation in this is kind of is split into kind of 2 paths, right? You have these areas here, these ways, that are basically, they represent areas where like the tunnels are so complex that you have to actually roll to navigate through them, and it can take hours and hours and hours depending on how well you do. And then you
And
have
hours means torches, right?
torches. Yeah,
It means
torches.
torches.
Also
It can
hunger.
mean
It means
ran.
rest. It means lots of
It could
stuff.
mean
Yeah.
random encounters. There's a
Yep.
bunch of charts, and also for all those people like I have dancing lights. Hold your horses with magic that produces light
Yeah,
because
we'll get to that. We'll get
there
to
is a
that.
thing, and even if you're like I can't make my players like count their torches, just you wait. They'll need it.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
worry, we got you. So yeah, and then you've got these pathways up here, right? These kind of less abstract ones. They have a time attached to them, right? They're like they're assumed to be just kind of single tunnels or very simple journeys through the dark, and they have a like 1 hour, 2 hour kind of time frame, right? So that is navigating the kind of the dark and stuff like that.
I just realized we kind of skipped ahead a little bit. So
Oh
basically,
yeah,
at the beginning of the adventure, you start with the awakening, where you're tilted off the cart. Then you have this first junction, J1.
yep.
It's called Sharp Turn, and you have a secret passage to the Venom Pit in the Broken Sanctum. There's a bunch of lore, and some. There's a puzzle there, right? Venom Pit.
There's a puzzle, yeah. So the Broken Sanctum is a kind of mechanical puzzle.
Mm-hmm. And then the alternative version is the gorge, which is some terrain hazard encounter kind of situation.
Yeah,
There's
and
skill
the idea
checks and that
is
kind of thing.
yeah, and the idea is that these ones take way less time to do if you just breeze through them, right?
If you find them.
Yeah,
Well.
if you find the
There's
right things, if you find the opening, these can be a much quicker route. But they also require a bit of brain power and a bit of bravery, right? Whereas the gorge is kind of more dangerous and longer, but it's also it could never be a dead end if you don't figure it out, right? You can always get over the
I always
gorge.
get through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just lose some HP, it's fine. And then we get to the Devourer Hauler. So going back to what are Devourer beasts?
Horrible blind aberrations that live deep below the earth. They eat people, right? They have no eyes. They have mouths on their tendrils that come off their body, right?
Tremor
and
sense.
tremor sense. They kind of navigate by tremor sense and smell, and yeah, overall they're pretty unpleasant creatures. They swallow things whole, right? They can just grab you up and swallow you, and start digesting you. But the other thing is their little tentacle mouths eat light, right? So if you've got your torch up, or a light spell or something, they can take a bonus action to go, ooh, nice, I'll have that.
Tasty.
Yeah, I'll take that. And this doesn't put out torches. Actually, it like means the fire like just sheds no light, right? So
So people
yeah,
can burn themselves.
so
That's
people can
hilarious.
burn themselves on them, right? Yeah, but it's
That's
more
funny.
about like it makes the fight much
Depends
harder.
how mean you are as a DM, I guess.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Very
Yeah.
nice.
This is
And-
also this section where you fight the Devourers is kind of where players can try and get a bunch of equipment. Basically, if you've
Right.
introduced this campaign with the players having nothing on them, this is where they can take some risks to try and grab basic equipment, things like swords, packs, ropes, pitons, that stuff, right?
And it's also kind of interesting because many times when you start a D&D campaign these days, it's very much I have everything, and basic equipment just gives you
Yeah.
like 5 javelins and ropes and armor, and here it's nice that you're stripping them down even though they are level 5. So
no magic items at this point.
No magic
no
items.
Yes. Magic focuses you can find in there if you want to be extra
Yes.
cool to your
Yeah,
spellcasters.
the idea is this is a place where there is a list of items in there, but this is also designed to be a place where if you really need to give a player something, you can just put it in there. Right?
Nice. Moving on from the Devourer Hollow, you take a short walk and you get to the brook, which is a little stream. And in the stream, you find a non-combat encounter with a very interesting creature called Iku, which is I'll explain that one.
Yeah, go for it.
It's basically it's a little creature that echoes back at you a little bit like a kenku, but it has a very different flavor. It's a very intelligent creature, and he likes to eat wood, specifically torches. So if you he likes the smell of the burning material.
The idea is the pine pitch, the stuff that you
Yeah.
use to put on torches, right? It likes to lick them off.
Yes. So if you keep feeding him, he's nice to you, and if you treat him well, he's nice to you. But if you don't treat him well, he might mislead you to the more dangerous path. So he's kind of a be careful what you wish for kind of friend. And after that, there are two options. They can either go to the ruined cap or to the Worldling nest. Yeah, basically. But so let's say we go to the ruined camp. What do they find there?
So the ruined camp there is a small combat encounter there with things that we've called hollow men. They are wights mechanically, and these are people who were previous campers here, right? So there are other people down in Deephold, quite a lot of them actually, and these people are kind of like scavengers and treasure hunters that were here long before the characters, and they've all been killed by monsters that we will introduce in a moment. And they've had their souls kind of sucked out, right? And the function here is to introduce kind of this idea that there's something that kind of kills people in the caverns, and there's also a little kind of like a logbook the characters can find, which gives them a few hints about something. So I think actually here we should probably talk about the magical mechanic here. So the idea is there are creatures in these caverns called soul eaters, right? And they basically get a kind of ping on their radar whenever somebody does magic. And specifically, they get it when you kind of you concentrate on or maintain a spell for an hour or more.
For over an hour.
For over an hour, yeah. So and the idea is that whenever a character, say, keeps light on cumulatively, right? So they can't just turn it on and off for an hour or more, or any spell like that, right? You add a die to a little die pool, and then whenever they rest, you roll the die, and for each one, a soul eater attacks the party, right? And these things are really deadly. Right? They are designed to be
Or long
really
rest. Long rest, not
long
short
rest.
rest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are designed to be really really nasty to fight.
They
Right?
are the boogeyman.
They are the
Like,
boogeyman of the spell.
players will not like this.
Absolutely. They steal your spells. They steal your spell slots. They turn off your abilities in combat. They are a horrendous monster that players really should be afraid of. And the idea actually is that they kind of dissuade using a lot of light spells and things like that throughout the whole campaign because they're everywhere here. Right. Um,
In cities and stuff like that, it's fine. Also,
yeah.
mage armor is exempt. There are a bunch of different. You need to read the thing, but it is
And
well balanced, and it's a really nice.
absolutely.
It gives a
Yeah.
completely different flavor to the whole campaign, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's very likely that a spellcaster at the beginning will be like, "I don't need torches. I'll just do dancing
Do
lights."
this. Yeah.
So it's very likely that the first time they go to sleep, they might actually meet one. So they can learn a bunch of stuff about them here and
Yes.
that kind of thing.
They can actually learn about them or learn that there is something like this previously, like when they're kind of going into into Deephold. But this is an area where they find like this camp is a place where they can find an old logbook by a wizard who was part of this group, and it has a bunch of hints in it. Right, it doesn't tell the players exactly that like magic does this, but it kind of leaves some little hints there. And the idea is that the wizard thought light was doing it, and he set up a spell to like ward and make it so light didn't come out of an area, right? And they still got eaten, so clearly he was wrong, right?
Yeah. All right, moving on. So if you instead in J2 they instead of going to the ruined camp, which is where Eco would take them, by the way, instead they go to the more dangerous part. They get to the Worldling nest, which is eyeless creatures. So Daniel, what are Worldlings?
Yeah, so Worldlings are they are basically the descendants of elves that were kind of forced underground, right? They are kind of mutated Morlock-like blind monstrosities. They smell real bad, so bad they give you a demodifier when they're near you. They have a nasty disease on them that makes you go blind. They are but other than that, they're quite unimpressive. They're kind of very crawly, creepy creatures that are quite easy to kill, but are in large numbers. And in this area, the players will come to a place where a bunch of them are sleeping, and it's basically either a combat or a stealth encounter. The characters can, if they're very careful, stealth through, but there are also some kind of magic items teased around the place. So if the players
Risk reward.
want, yeah, exactly. If the players want that stuff, they've got to kind of risk waking the whole group up.
Yeah, Tremor Sense is fun.
Yeah.
And then they continue from there and they get to the lower nest. So what happens in the lower nest?
Yeah, so the Worldlings are just about smart enough to set up loads of traps, right? So the lower nest is meant to be a whole area, a whole kind of honeycomb of caverns where there are lots of little Worldling nests around the place. And they have set up all these little traps everywhere, like these little hanging beads and things that like make noises when characters go through them. Coins that characters will see and want to take off, and they're kind of rigged so that like if they try and pull them, a whole bunch of like metal scrap falls and makes a lot of noise, right?
Mhm.
They've got kind of pits in the ground where if you're concentrating on all the hanging stuff, you don't notice there's pits in the ground where you can fall into stuff that makes noise, that kind of thing, right? And basically, how this kind of shakes down is if the characters get through here without triggering anything, they're kind of fine, right? But if they trigger any of these traps, they spark off a skill challenge. They kind of alert the hundreds of Worldlings that live in the area to the fact of them being there. And essentially, a horde of these creatures runs after them, and they basically have to run, right? And that is a skill challenge. And whether they succeed or fail here determines what the next part of the adventure is like.
It determines how many turns they have under pressure or not
Yeah.
under pressure if
Yeah.
they do well. So what is the Tetrad Gates? What's with that puzzle?
So the Tetrad Gate is the entrance to the Temple of Malashai, which is the last chapter of this whole thing. And the Tetrad Gates, these big kind of huge temple gates that have these statues of a bunch of kind of ancient gods next to them, right? And there is just a little puzzle here where the characters can figure out that they need to feed these things a little bit of blood to get the doors to open, and the blood is specific, right? These
You
gods.
don't have to use blood, but yes, this is a bit
Sure.
of a dark campaign.
This is
Just
a dark campaign.
warning,
Yeah.
anybody lighthearted.
Yeah.
Not too
And
dark,
these
but
gods
yeah.
are pretty like selective. They don't just take anything. Like one of them requires the blood of somebody with a clear conscience, for example. One of them wants you to
Oh,
have
wait.
at least +2 strength. Yeah. So
Stressful.
if you've been followed here by Worldlings, by a horde of them from the lower nests, then you've got to do this under pressure. You have a kind of infinite
Yeah, a
horde of
couple
these
of
things
turns.
coming through. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
From there, we continue into the next junction, the Anak Hall. And in the Anak Hall, you get to go either to the feeding cave or the Blood of the Behemoth. Which one?
the abode of the Behemoth is a kind of puzzle fight, sort of, slash stealth encounter.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, it is very fun to run, actually. So the idea is there is this kind of mutated giant trapped down here, and it stalks through the dark, and it's actually not very good at being blind, right? It's blind, but it's kind of been turned blind. It's actually has to find its way through the dark and claw around, and this thing is way too strong for the characters to fight at this level.
Yeah.
Like way too strong.
CR 15 or something.
Yeah, it has 333 hit points. Like it does a huge amount of damage. It's very hard to fight, but it's also very easy to avoid. Right, it only responds to sound, and if players make a lot of sound, it will like charge at them as a reaction. And there are a few things around the place that kind of bait players into making sound. But generally, the idea is to kind of get through here while creating distractions for this creature so you don't have to fight it. And there's a way out that's easy to find, or easy-ish to find, tunnel.
Yeah.
Yep. And then there is a secret way out that you kind of that rewards exploring the whole cavern, right? That will take you kind of straight to near the end of the adventure, pretty much.
Yeah. When we were playtesting this, we were playing the tan 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 music and
but
just
absolutely.
running around. People were doing noise there, trying to distract it while we're grabbing the magic items, finding the secret doors, all this stuff.
Amazing.
It was fun.
It was very.
And what is the feeding cave? What is that like?
So the feeding cave is, it's another kind of stealth, like optional stealth kind of combat encounter, right? So the idea is here, one of the resources you can actually gather kind of all over the campaign is introduced this thing called glowstone. This stone that just emits light for a while after you harvest it. And there basically are a bunch of these creatures, the Devourer beasts, hanging around there, feeding on the light. It's actually one Devourer beast and a bunch of young Devourer beasts who are not quite as nasty. And the characters can either try and kind of sneak around and be inventive with how they get around there, or they can be like, okay, you know what? I want to check out that cool stone. Let's fight, right? And there is a second. This encounter is a little harder than it looks, because the idea is the Worldlings, specifically the Worldling warriors, which are kind of more intelligent. They have bows, they have swords.
So moving on, we get to the shrine entrance. So each of these J's here represent a junction, so it's a choice, right? And there is a pile of rubble. They can either climb up and see what's happening in the big boss fight room, or they can go to the side chambers. There's a bunch of options. There's a secret door. So there are 3 different ways to enter the boss fight, and if you're smart about it, then you take your time. And there is a trap there that is quite ironic, actually, that makes you blind
for an hour.
So for an hour. Is it D4? Maybe it's D4. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it's kind of ironic for this event. And then the boss fight is quite a hell of a boss fight. We can bring up the map, I think.
Sure. So it's designed to just be quite a. It's designed so you can kind of really plan the fight and enter from multiple different ways. It's also designed so that like you've got a lot of like frontline squishy creatures to fight, and then a bunch of backline archery guys, and then a very cool boss dude who kind of is throwing fire at you, right, and things like that. Story-wise, this is very important. This whole thing, right? A whole bunch of things in the campaign are introduced here, like the characters getting sick from something, for example, and how much you want to use of that really is up to you. Yeah, in terms of like the adventure, this is maybe one of the most important points in the campaign.
It does give you, because the reason for players to not try to get back up is because they get sick, and the cure is rumored to be deep down below.
Way down below.
And also they release something here, and also
Yeah, a few things happen.
yeah, a few things happen, and also one of the main kind of NPC, is she good? Is she bad? Is a prisoner here, and you help her, but she also hates you. Maybe kind of, not really, depending how you interact with her. And yeah, and just the fight is it could be very hard if like
it's fairly punishing if you don't prepare well for it, I would say.
yeah, exactly.
So if you want to take this actually like as the first chapter of the longer campaign, this is like the instigating moment, right?
This is absolutely not just for the characters, but for some of the important NPCs as well. Right? This is kind of the like bang moment that causes a lot of events to go off.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's basically the Land of the Blind. You can use it either as the beginning of the campaign or as a standalone adventure. It's 4 or 5 sessions for level 5 characters. Can easily run it to level 6 or level 4. It's fine. It was a blast to playtest, and do let us know. Write in if you playtest it. We would love to hear. It's always great to hear when people play our adventures. And yeah, happy rampage, guys.
Bye bye.
See you around, people.